Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and as you saw from our introduction, we're going to do a little bit of walking down memory lane, but it's a short-term memory, to the Civic Expo that hopefully you were able to participate in. But before you meet my wonderful guests, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We are live this evening. If you have a suggestion for a future topic, you are more than welcome to email me at talk@bcattv.org. Love to get emails. I would like to thank the crew for this evening. Staff member Chris Flaherty, who always makes sure us volunteers keep everything smooth running, and is also really good at putting out fires if us volunteers don't keep everything smooth running. Volunteers this evening: Christina Nikitas, Lucian Gates, Evan McNamee, Gwyneth McNamee, and Sue Linder. So thank you all for giving up your Wednesday night for coming here. And since Evan and Gwyneth are both here, there is no daddy date night tonight. So hopefully daddy is enjoying quiet time with the cats. Although quiet time and cats might not go. So anyway, now you can meet my wonderful guests. Nicci Kadilak, who is the founder of Burlington Buzz and just all around new town poster child, I guess. I don't know. Everybody knows you now. It's great. And Amy Warfield, who everybody also knows because you are our town clerk, making sure that everything in town stays nice and organized and neat. So thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So can't wait to find out about next year's Civic Expo. But let's recap a little bit. But again, even before that, can you guys give us like the 10-cent tour of where you grew up, how you came to Burlington, and what made you get interested in civic responsibility and awareness?
For it. Okay. Well, we moved to Burlington in 1983. We had actually, my husband and I had graduated from college in Rhode Island, and his first job was up here in the New England Executive Park for a company called Arthur G. Little Systems.
Oh, okay.
And we kind of lived in a couple apartments around the area, and then in '83 bought a house here.
Excellent. And you've been here ever since.
That's right. Been here ever since. We have one daughter that was raised here, went to the Burlington schools. And then we also got very involved with town government kind of in the beginning. My husband was on town meeting. I was a library trustee. I grew up in metropolitan Washington, D.C. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of government,
you kind of just breathe politics down there.
One of the things that I always tell people, I think that one that also got me interested and got me a lot of background is in high school, our government teacher was a Virginia state legislator.
Oh,
so
cool.
He would come back from legislative sessions and we'd talk about what was going on at that level, and very quickly kind of learned all that stuff, and
it's like
involved.
Real application. That's like cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, and I've been town clerk. I started in the clerk's office in 2005 and been town clerk since 2011.
Excellent. Well, we are glad to have you.
Thank you.
Your turn.
Well, I'm really envious of that experience that you had in high school. I would have loved some kind of connection at all with government. Anyway, I grew up in Missouri, rural Missouri, and moved to Boston in 2000 for college. So that dates me a little bit, but that's where we are. I met my husband in 2002 while I was at Bayou, and we got married in 2009 after we spent some time in California. So we've been here in Burlington since 2013. Moved here when I was pregnant with my second daughter, who's now 10. And almost 11. And so I grew up not really knowing or caring anything about local government at all, or really government in general, and didn't really get interested or involved in government and politics until 2016 probably. And when I got the opportunity to join town meeting in 2021, I thought, well, this is a good way for me to learn more about the way the town works. And once I started realizing how much I didn't know, but how much of our daily lives are affected by what goes on in the town, I thought, well, everybody really should know this. And so I kind of just took it upon myself to start educating everybody as I was educating myself. So that's how.
Why not? You know, why reinvent the wheel?
Right, exactly. And why, you know, why keep it all to myself? So everybody else has to benefit from my learning as well. So that's
we appreciate that.
That's what I've been doing, and who knew I would become like a civics junkie, but I really, really enjoy it.
Well, somebody's got to educate us.
That's right.
So speaking of education, where and when did you come up with the idea of a Civic Expo? Because you have like college expos and chocolate expos and comic book expos. Why? I didn't realize they were all C's, but
chocolate. There you go. That would be a good combination.
More people would come, I think.
Chocolate fountain in the middle of the expo.
okay.
Oh man.
Yeah, but then you'd have to get the Board of Health involved. Well, they probably were there anyway. But
They were actually, speaking of which, actually, it's quite interesting. This was an idea that myself and Jim Tigas and Nick Priest, the select board members, had floated back in 2019. And we were trying to figure out when to put it in. And
don't tell me, March of 2020.
Oh, of course, like everything else in the universe. And so it just, of course, got stopped.
Longest 2 weeks of my life.
And then Nicci and I had a conversation back in the fall.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, we got to do something like this. And I said, funny thing about that, we kind of have some rough plans.
You already got
shall
it.
we get going on it?
Yeah.
And
So
do it.
had there been like Civic Expos in other communities where you got the idea, or you're just
there's a couple things kind of going back with, like, I think, any of us who are trained to be educators, we look at everything as an opportunity that, okay, we'll learn it, and then we need to disseminate it to somebody.
That's right.
And so when I became town clerk, what I tried to do was do informational meetings for town meeting. There are some towns that have like a citizens academy, and I looked into doing that, but the problem is it's a lot of effort for like a 6-week piece where you might only be able to handle 20 people at a time.
Right, not a lot of return on
The
your
ROI
investment.
on it is very low. So the more I did informational meetings, it was like, okay, how do we get the department, the different people in the departments to get engaged so that they can get their information out. And it's very hard to get, sometimes to just get people to say, well, just show up and talk about yourself. They need to come to your show more often.
Well,
but there you go.
Give them my number.
I will. So that's where kind of, again, the idea of, let's have, a trade show. I mean, prior to coming to work for the town, I worked in the print and publishing industry, which was trade shows all over the place,
right? Yeah.
And computer trade shows and that kind of stuff. So it's like, let's figure out a way to kind of get that where we get the biggest bang for the buck.
Right. Well, it's also kind of hard too because, like you had said, get the town departments vested to show up, but then also get the community to want to learn about it, because you could have meetings at the library until the cows come home, but unless people show up, so.
Well, and that's, I think, one nice thing working with somebody like Nicci, who's kind of driven the same way I am, is that, and I am very grateful for the participation from the town departments. And then Nicci has a lot of contacts into the nonprofit and the community side. So we were able to pull all those different pieces together. And all the department heads that I talked to said, that was really fun. We had a good time. There were a lot of people that came. It was fun to have people actually asking me what I do. Or what, why would, one of the department heads said, somebody came up and said, why would I come to your office? I thought that's a very
It's a great question.
directed question.
Yeah.
And very good. So, and I said, how did you like having, he said, well, actually, it was really kind of neat because then I could tell him what I do and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So. It just really was, a
My
good
tax
reception.
dollars pay your salary. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I always, when people come in, a lot of times people will come in and they're doing a dog license or something, and they'll say, oh, I have to go to the tax office. I always do say to them, thank you for paying my salary. Because they are, and I realize that, and I appreciate it. So, I mean, that kind of is one of the things that I think came out of it. I think, and we've talked about this, is that, we maybe, now next time, we can start planning it ahead and we can do much more to maybe have a bigger venue and also to do a bigger thing about getting the public in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first time for anything, the vendors or the town departments probably aren't sure if they want to show up because they're like, okay, what's in it for me? And then at the same time, the community is like, I don't know what this is. I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
Right. That's the question that I've been trying to answer with Burlington Buzz for 2 years, is the question of like, why should I go? Why should I care?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I learn about all of this stuff? And I think we've created this venue whereby people can just passively consume the information and then sort of learn by osmosis or absorbing, like what is in it for you? Why do you need to know this? Why should this be important to you? And even if this isn't important to you right now, this probably is, and maybe this is important later. And so that was, and continues to be one of the biggest challenges that I face, is just answering that question, right? Mm-hmm. Why should you care? Because it's so obvious to me why we should care. But for somebody who's, their kids are little, or they're taking care of their parents, or they're working 80 hours a week, or whatever it is, like, it's hard to
It's
hard to make, and life is more life than it used to be, right? Mm-hmm. There's not any downtime anymore for anybody. And so, making time for this, what we really wanted to convey is that you can make 5 minutes a week, or you can make, 40 hours a week for this kind of civic engagement. You just have to choose what's important to you and how you can make an impact.
I mean, one of the things that always strikes me, and this I run into with my friends, is that, one question that I find is, when people have children in school, you naturally know where to go to get the services you need for your children. But one question is, people who are struggling with their parents, I'll say, well, doesn't your town have a council on aging? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, go look it up. So I mean,
you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right, exactly. So it's people just don't know where to start to ask, and that's one of the things that I think both Nicci and I felt with the Civic Expo gave them that start.
Yeah, and so I didn't know any of this about Amy and Jim and Nick, having talked about this before, but I was talking on my own with a partner of mine about creating something like this. And we work on sort of voting and civic engagement and getting people involved in answering questions and voting and giving feedback to their elected officials, not at election time. So sort of through voting on different things, what's the issue that's important to you, or should the town build a new baseball field or whatever, and just getting people involved in talking, right, and in a way that we don't do civically. And so he and I, there was a grant opportunity from American Journalism Project, and they were giving away X amount of dollars, and you could ask for a certain amount. And I thought, well, this would be a really cool thing to do. Yeah. So I wrote up a grant proposal and
copious spare time.
asked them for $5,000 to do this. Now, knowing that this is a very small market for AJP, and this is, it was unlikely I was going to get everything that I asked for, but they ended up not giving me anything, which I was disappointed about, but not entirely surprised. And so after that, I was just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this, because I am not an event planner, and the whole point of the $5,000 was to hire an event planner and buy food and pay for childcare and like all of these things that we could do. And so I hadn't forgotten about it, but I had kind of put it in my back pocket for a little while because I just didn't want to handle it. And then Amy mentioned it, and she's like, hey, we talked about this thing, and I was like, okay, yeah. It feels like the right time.
Ping, ping, ping.
Right, exactly. Like it felt like the right time to
Yeah.
do something like this. And so what we ended up doing is the department's 49 organizations came to this.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had 29 tables.
So we kind of
Okay,
like-
do the math.
So people got a little cozy.
Yes. People got to know each other really well. And so 49 organizations came, multiple people per organization. So, just with those people and groups that we had here, it's probably 75 to 100 people just from the organization.
Representing.
Yeah, which is
Phenomenal.
really amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were so excited. Every single group that reached out to me was like, I'm really excited, here are my ideas. Like, this is what we're going to do a prize wheel, and we're going to give away I don't even know, there was a compost bin, there was all sorts of stuff.
How'd you find these, the nonprofit organizations or the organizations?
Well,
Because I
most-
see
yeah.
the connection to the town. You have, all of the town departments.
Well, I think part of it is just like, where can people go when they need things?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Or where can you go to get involved in a different way that's not government? Right?
Okay.
And so, Amy had mentioned the idea of inviting nonprofits. I think it was a really good one. I invited all of the ones that I could think of in town.
Yeah.
And most of them came.
Yeah, it
Cool.
really, well, and like you said, it was the organizations that we know of that help people in one way or the other. So it was people helping people and Helps Us and We Care and Women Aid. So, those are the ones I can remember. I'm sure there's somebody I've forgotten.
Yeah, IAB was there.
Yeah, IAB was
Indian
there.
Americans for Burlington.
Sahili?
I'm trying to think. Sahili did not come this time around, but
Okay.
I bet you they will next time.
Yeah. So, it was, again, because
Didn't mean
that's
to
really
call 'em out.
that's really part of, the whole being part of a community. And I think that's the thing that has certainly gone out of vogue since my daughter was growing up. I mean, my daughter graduated from high school in 2002. So, it's gone out of vogue, and I even know the previous generation, there are a lot of neighbors that I've had that's like, oh, well, we used to have a women's softball league, and we used to get together at, this group would get together for this, and, so that had kind of gone out of vogue, and so it's really just trying to reintroduce these nonprofits that exist, not only because you might not need their services, but you can certainly help them. I mean, one of the things that my husband and I do is we volunteer on Saturday mornings at the food pantry because we help take in all the donations, date check everything, organize it, put it into the back room is like a stock room. And so it's like that's like one place where people can just help, and it's a pretty 2-hour, 3-hour commitment. And so how do I get involved? And for at least for me, that was one of the places where I've made a lot of friends in Burlington was when our daughter was younger and you were engaged with those things,
Yeah.
So it's like just trying to give people a place to connect in the community.
Yeah. One of my friends actually, I didn't tell you this, but he has this vision now that 5 years from now it's just going to be one big town party.
I like that.
That's cool
Isn't
too.
that a nice vision?
Yeah.
Partner with the beer garden. No,
Well, we could do that too, yeah.
Mama Bear Effect was there also. I don't want to forget
Yeah,
them.
yes.
I'm probably I'll still be thinking
Yeah, I
of
was going to say,
nonprofits.
well, and even like the Science Center was there.
Science
and
Center, yeah.
It just, I was so thrilled with the number of people that wanted to show up and wanted to participate. It
Cool.
gives you that sense. Sometimes you start to get isolated and you start to think, well, nobody really cares about Burlington. But it's a way of, okay, let's see how they can care. And that was one of the things that I think came out of it.
Yeah, and I think people can show care in different ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even though I really want them to run for town meeting, sometimes that's not the way
Well,
they're
I
going
can
to show
too, because
care.
I have lots of seats to fill.
How did you determine like the date and the location and obviously the location you did, and you mentioned that it was kind of small, but again, first time doing anything, you really don't want to book TD Garden,
Right.
or, you know, I know they're not local, but first thing that came to mind.
I was going to say Carnegie Hall, so.
Okay. Whoa, that's a little
I
longer
don't know if we
commute.
can pay for the transportation.
So, I mean, how did you go about starting to plan this thing? Okay, you have the idea. Now what?
Yeah, I mean, I think my first idea was to go to a school, and we were kind of like, maybe for the first time around, you know, it's better to kind of stick with the Murray Kelly wing. I had never actually seen the Murray Kelly wing until I went to visit it the day that I was planning on it. And so I was, you know, I looked in and I was like, oh yeah, this looks okay. And I started brainstorming like a map, a venue map of like how we would set it up. And I talked with Marge from the Council on Aging, and she was like, that's exactly the way we do it for the Healthcare Expo. And I was like, okay, great. So we're on the same wavelength here.
Okay.
But yeah, it ended up being maybe a little bit tight.
Tighter than we thought, yeah. Well, and from my standpoint, knowing what the different facilities are in town, I was trying to get, you know, the place that that had the best optimization for what we were trying to do, with kind of having a flow and that kind of stuff. So yeah, and that's why we've talked about for the future, certainly we need something that's much larger. And maybe, you know, I keep throwing out like the high school cafeteria. And then to get to your point about how do we pick a date, well, we talked about, you know, one of our things was that, you know, since we're coming into an election season here for the town, let's do something in a timely manner where somebody who maybe found out something about running for town meeting had time to still be able to get papers and that type of stuff. So, and then when it was available, so.
Yeah.
But also, you know, again, I'm kind of jumping to a conclusion here, but by going to the Council on Aging, you're also highlighting or featuring one of the services that the town provides, because I think you had mentioned that you had never been inside the, you know, Council on Aging Murray Kelly wing. So for those people who may in the near future need this resource, okay, I'm familiar with this now. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 type thing.
Well, and I think it's one of those things is we certainly have a number of, you know, commercial facilities in Burlington that we could maybe use at some point. But again, it's the Civic Expo and trying to pull them, like you just said, into some facility that is part of the town.
Right.
And I think that, again, gives a different sense of engagement.
Right. You know, the Marriott versus...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't a commercial event. This wasn't a place, we talked about this early on, like this wasn't a place where businesses are going to come and highlight, you know, try to get people to go to their business, or highlight what they do or anything like that. Some very generous businesses donated things, gift cards and food and things like that, which was great. I should just mention them. So Wegmans donated a gift card towards food. So did Mom's Organic Market. Bagel Bar provided the coffee that we had there, which there are people apparently who drink coffee at that hour. I am not one of them. And we had Girl Scout cookies that were donated from Troop 70240, I think.
Okay.
I might be forgetting. I don't know.
Marissa? No,
Cherry.
Okay, Girl Scout cookies.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
Thank you for the Girl Scout cookies. I'm sorry that I can't remember your number.
Ever since they moved up to 5 digits.
Yes. And LaCasha's donated a lot of beautiful pastries. And so I talked about trying to get a grant for this, and what we ended up having was just as good as having a grant, because we had these businesses that were willing to donate their goods, and then we also had people who were willing to donate their time. So another important thing to me was to have childcare. This is kind of a funny thing, because we haven't talked about this since the expo, but I thought, because my youngest is 3.5, so he's just ma all the time. And I thought, it would be great to have childcare so that your kids aren't pulling on your shirt tails the whole time when you're trying to learn things.
Okay.
Nobody went to the childcare room.
Really?
Nobody. And
Well, who were the child
So
care
it-
providers?
So there were some volunteers who
Okay.
were quarried by the town who volunteered to
I'm
do
just
it.
like, is it a, go up to the gymnasium and just run around and
No, no.
have at it?
No, there were structured
Yeah, did a good job of making sure that it was organized activities. Somebody who was really,
Yeah, they were.
child care
Okay.
savvy.
Yeah, and
my apologies, I wasn't able to go, so I could not experience said child care.
Listen, and I think that makes me rethink what we do for childcare next year, because many people just brought their kids around and they engaged with the community members who were there, and so they're like, no, next year please bill this as a family event, and so
okay.
it sounds a little bit more like maybe one half of the cafeteria is the expo and the other half is a place where younger kids can go and do activities, but still be sort of around where their parents
and
are.
things having things like the science center, so that yes, there's engagement and that kind of stuff, but there's also it's in an area where mom and dad are there and that kind of stuff.
It's an
The one
open
thing-
visibility.
the one thing I saw that the kids really liked was the DPW had little trash toters that are like pencil holders.
Fun!
And I think I saw every kid with one of those. It's like, what would I have?
Oh, my son would have lost his mind.
Yeah.
He found one of those at the Dollar Tree one day and said, like, Mom, look how cute this pencil holder is, because he knows how to get my heartstrings.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think the library was there with lollipop stands, and you could get your flu shot there or your blood pressure checked. Like there was just something for
Everybody.
literally everybody.
Exactly.
And back to the Science Center, who doesn't love checking out the hissing cockroaches?
Exactly.
Absolutely, and Scout the Owl was there, and so probably 4 or 5 people on their
love Scout.
feedback forms were like, "I saw a live owl." That was the most exciting thing that they did at the Civic Expo, which is fantastic.
Well, it is pretty cool.
It is pretty
is very
cool,
cool.
and the Science Center is one of the great resources that we have in town. So
Yeah.
of course we want to highlight that. So yeah, I mean we have a few people this year who either couldn't come or didn't get an invite who we've added to the list for next year. But definitely people have said
Because you had so
yes.
much extra space that you could have accommodated.
Yeah, I did
an
have to
extra-
cut it off at some point.
Kind of like
Yeah. So, and one other thing that we did intentionally was we held it on a Wednesday night, which is when the departments are open late. And so it wasn't asking department people to show up on a Saturday. It was a time that they were already there.
Okay.
And that's not to say maybe in the future we don't do it on a different day or try something different, but for this first time and to really ensure that we were going to have the success we wanted to have,
Right.
I think it worked out really well. It was a really
did.
good idea.
Because I was going to ask, why in the middle of the week? Because there is so, one of the things I love about Burlington in general is there are so many things for families to do, for individuals to do. There's never a dull moment.
yeah.
So trying to
people
carve out additional time in your day.
People were showing up on their way to Scouts, on their way from Scouts, on their way to their kids' chorus concert, or instrumental music concert.
Band concert. Yep.
There was a Shawsheen open house that night.
I found out about the week before. Somebody said, "You do know the Shawsheen," and I'm like, "Oh no."
I didn't find out until the week before either.
But there's never going to be a
never
time.
Kindergarten open house was that night, too, or kindergarten information night.
Oh,
So
yep.
there were so many things going on, but it was a drop-in event. So you don't have to go and stay there from 5 to 7. You
they
can
could just
go
be real quick.
for 30 minutes and then head on your way. But that's the other reason that we wanted to have some food available as well, because we're aware that it's basically dinner time, right? And we want
So
to
you could
feed
have,
you a little bit.
coffee and cupcakes for dinner.
You got
I
it.
love
Dinner of champions.
Yeah, exactly. No, we had cheese and crackers.
Yep. I don't know why you're hungry, child. That's what I would say.
So what kind of promotion were you able to do to notify all different aspects of the community? Those with school-age children as well as those who might be looking for elder care and everybody in between.
Well, I think we did heavily depend on social media. I did also send in to the Daily Times, which they are always willing to put something in for me, and so he ran the flyer like three times. But I think that that may be the area that we can most improve on. And again, given more time, we can really come up with a strategy for how are we going to get this out. Something like making sure, because even Council on Aging, Marge told me, well, if you'd let me know, she does her newsletter a month and a half ahead. So the December, what she publishes in December is really for January. And so, if we had done that, she could have gotten it out to the Council on Aging people, which that newsletter does go to everybody over the age of 55. And then also we could hit up the schools in terms of, how if we had a flyer that could go out.
So Parent Square got a flyer.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, and they did post it. It was kind of in a funky place on the Parent Square website, so it didn't actually get pushed to parents like me. Like I didn't see it, but if you go on the website, go to the community information place. That's where it is.
Although I have so many apps for all of my kids' stuff that I'm like starting to tune it out.
Yeah.
And then, obviously the Buzz, Nicci was out there every day. And then, I just also on Facebook, I use my town clerk Facebook, I use the Burlington Residents Network, those kinds of things just to get the message out. And of course people grab it and then put it on. So yeah, I think that again, we realize that that's an area that we can really hit hard next year because we'll give ourselves a little more time.
Yeah. I'm also thinking, it could just be, Captain Oblivious over here, is I saw, Civic Expo, and I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
So I don't know if just
ads.
It's hard. It's hard to message things like that,
but now
right?
I'm thinking, like we had said earlier, now the word's out. And people know about it, and they're going to be looking for it in the future.
That's the hope. And it probably, if I had to guess, it'd probably be in January again next year. We have gotten feedback that we should have it outdoors.
Not in January.
Not in January. No.
Unless we have that very rare day of 60 degrees.
You can't predict that.
Climate change. You can't really predict that.
But yeah, I think that, a lot of people would like to see it sort of outdoors on the common and warmer weather and things like that. But I think we'll have to talk about it and see how effective it was as a motivational tool to get people involved in the election. But I like the idea of tying it to the engagement part of the election.
Because I'm thinking actually have it at the election so people could come and vote
Well, the problem with that is that.
I know there are lots of problems with that.
So many problems with that.
We don't need to go into that right now.
Sorry, I tend to be too practical sometimes.
Just like, because I remember talking to you earlier when you joined me on the show to talk about the upcoming election, that it's like, 13% of the voting population comes. I'm like, that is embarrassing.
But that is very typical of local elections across the Commonwealth. Now, we hit it out of the park for presidential elections. We run 85 to 87%. We're one of the top communities in the state.
But it still should be more than 13%.
I agree totally. It's like whenever anybody says to me, well, I vote in the important elections, and I always say, and which ones are those?
Yeah.
But
I think too that there are different interpretations of why people don't show up for local elections. And one interpretation is they're fine with the way things are.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And so that prior to starting the Buzz, that was not my interpretation. My interpretation was apathy. And I do think there are a fair number.
Still probably plenty of that.
I think that there are a fair number of people who are apathetic and who have grown up to think that these things are, small town politics and it's not important and, it doesn't affect you. But literally, town meeting tells the town what it can purchase and what it can't. So there's 126 people that we are electing that represent us that go sit in a room and decide if the rec department can have a new van or not.
Yeah.
Or, decide if Herb Chambers can expand or not. Or in this particular iteration anyway.
and this meeting 2 nights ago was a very good example of that because about your comment about, it's not really apathy, but when there's something that is important to somebody, they show up.
Right. They show up for a financial article.
Because
right?
if it's about me,
if they
Right.
show
then
up
I
for
care.
tax increases,
Yeah.
right? They, the people who showed up for the Herb Chambers article were people who live near where the Herb Chambers was
have
going to
a-
expand. They
a
have
say, I mean,
yeah.
have something
invested interest.
invested interest.
Yeah,
in-
exactly.
And the people who show up to talk about the new school project are people who
I was
live
about to
near
say
the
the
new
whole
school.
Fox Hill thing. Is,
Right.
Well,
yeah.
and actually, interestingly enough, in the past, I have data that goes back for town meeting or town election votes for 40 years. The major 2 meetings that we've had people turn out for have been for debt exclusions
that have both failed.
that have both failed. We had over 50% both times. So again, it's so how do we help people understand that it seems like it's the mundane, like you said, just the regular old small town politics stuff, but there's a level of what are those people doing and how maybe I am satisfied with it and so I don't worry about it, but maybe I'm not.
Right.
And how do I get connected to be able to participate and show that I'm not satisfied
Right.
with it?
And informed enough.
Right.
I mean, most of the local elections that I've ever thought about being a part of is like, well, I don't have enough information to make a decision, nor did I know how to get the information. And that might be me being lazy and apathetic, or that might be that there wasn't a lot of information I could find.
Right. And I'm sorry. That is one of the things that I think that since we have lost the newspaper, that used to be a place where the local newspapers, we used to have 2 of them, and they would take articles and write articles about the candidates. So you had a place that not everybody subscribed to the newspaper, but usually I would say at one point I think I had a demographic that about 80% of the people got one or the other newspaper. One was a weekly and then the other one is the daily. So people had a place, or they could certainly, we had a place to send them to say, well, here is what it is, because that's the dilemma that the clerk's office runs into, is that the town cannot take the forefront on doing the candidate campaign education.
Right.
So that's why you have BCAT.
Well, that's why
I know.
we have BCAT. That's why we have the Buzz.
Yep.
Those are all very good
It still
avenues.
limits people who choose not to access online tools.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's, I tell people a lot of times, well, especially around elections, where do I find out about the candidates? Well, BCAT does run, well, I don't have cable. Well, you can get it on Facebook.
I
The
don't use
Buzz.
social media,
The Buzz,
yeah.
social media. But,
Right.
but the Buzz is out there. You can, those are the ways that you can get it. And, they're at that point,
And-
yes, the onus
yeah.
is on them.
Yeah.
And BCAT is also online too.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Oh, yeah.
They have the Facebook pages. They have,
The
But you
website.
go to the
Instagram, the
website, yeah.
website, YouTube. Everything is like rebroadcast. All right, I'm going into a BCAT commercial. I'm
The
sorry.
interesting thing is we have so many, this is what I find interesting, again, coming from a print background, is that, all we heard for the longest time in the print industry was how much better educated and communication things would be because we now have this World Wide Web. And we still have people who don't pick up the World Wide Web.
And even those who do, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah,
It's like, what do
exactly.
you pay attention to?
Exactly.
I have no idea.
I can only
Just because it's online doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
Right.
I mean,
well, and that's, but we have reliable sources that we can direct people to.
Oh
yeah.
man, we
try to.
You just gave me a dumb idea, and I'm not even going to say it out loud, but
Okay.
I'm going to write it in my list of dumb ideas.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
All right.
My pleasure. I try to help.
I'm looking at my questions and it's like measurable goals, overall successes. When you were still in the process of planning this event, what were your goals?
get people to show up.
But I mean, okay, just
Right? I mean, it wasn't like, it's hard when you've never done something like this before to think of what's a reasonable metric. Like, I could have said, I want 500 people to show up, and I have no idea if that's
Well, I think I
reasonable
even
or
asked
not.
you,
Yeah.
how many people do you think would make it successful? The biggest thing for me too was I really, and like I've said before, I really was hoping that every department would show up.
Did it.
And they did. And they seemed to enjoy it as much as I did. So it was like, that was, to me, was a big measure of success.
Yeah, I think it was. And I think, there are some kind of other ancillary benefits, right? I think the subscriber count to the Buzz went up by 100 in the last 2 weeks, which is, I think, a direct result of the sign that we put on the Common.
Yeah.
What's Burlington Buzz? And people coming and checking off the box on their exit form that said, sign me up to the newsletter, which, it's great for me, but it also is great for those people because that's 100 more people that are going to be educated on what goes on in town every day.
Right.
So I think that's excellent. And I think it's also sort of building goodwill with neighbors, building goodwill with the businesses in town. I think definitely, after I follow up with the businesses that helped us out this time, I think they would be more than willing to help us out again in the future if we, do something like this without a budget. I guess that's what happens. I think next year we'll be able to have a little bit more of a measurable goal of attendance and a way to measure it. It would be nice if we had one of those little clicker things when people walk in.
Actually, there's an app for that.
That's amazing. Of course there is. Of course there is.
I use it for the shred day. Election day. I got an easy way to count people.
Okay.
But yeah, for the shred day. So
gee, I wonder what that is, Amy. No.
so there's a very easy,
That's great.
That's an excellent idea.
I thought about it, and
one
then
more idea.
I wasn't able to go to the event because I was ill, but I thought about that a little bit late. I was a little bit late on that one. But yeah, I think that, and I think we can look at voter turnout. I don't know. I've been really hopeful about increased voter turnout for the last couple of years. Nothing has changed, but it would be nice to see more people that are being educated and showing up. And I do think anecdotally, one thing that has happened over the last 2 years is that more people are putting their names in for seats on town meeting, or like Sarah Walensky went on Conservation Commission. There are.
I was going to ask you that because I remember
they're learning some of the ways to get engaged, and I would say, because I think right now, I think for town meeting at least, I've got about I think 5 or 6 new people have signed up, taken up papers. So
yeah, and my precinct looks like it's going to be contested. I'm not thrilled about that. No, I am thrilled about that. I'm just afraid to lose my seat.
That's always the catch-22 because people say, "Well, I don't, am I going to have to run against somebody?" And it's like, well, that's what a race is.
Yeah, that's what government is, buddy.
But I don't want to, I don't want to have to beat somebody out. And I'm like, well, that's what an election is about.
Yeah. I mean, and if you think you're the right person for the job, then that really shouldn't be what holds you back from.
And then there's
doing
other
it.
ways of people getting involved too, and that's what I always try to do. Is I try to take down names, I give them to the select board, who is responsible for filling, different boards and committees, and say, well, this person seemed very interested in this, so why don't we see if we can, what committee matches that?
Yeah, which is great. And so I think just the kind of soft results of being able to forge better relationships, strong relationships, put names to faces, get people talking to each other and getting to know each other and aware of the opportunities that are out there.
face to face too, not just
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the things that I was thinking of as I was promoting the event was you call the DPW when your water main breaks, but when do you ever talk to the DPW aside from that, right? You speak with the police when they pull you over or when you need to call them on somebody, but how often do you just get a chance to talk with the police
Well,
officers.
that's what National Night Out or National Safety Night is for.
Well,
So
right.
it's like-
And so all of these are opportunities to speak with somebody when nobody's escalated and nobody wants anything from the other person. And that is where we actually can have really meaningful dialogue with people without anybody's sort of hackles getting raised. And I think that's really important because our hackles are perpetually raised.
That's a very good point. And just the fact what I saw was, people coming in and talking to some of those departments that are not always outward facing, like police or fire, but like accounting or IT. And so they're like, oh, okay, I can relate to that because, that's what I do at my company. And so again, it's a face-to-face thing. I must say I am very pleased that nobody asked, is this going to be a hybrid meeting? And
Oh, goodness, yeah.
I never mentioned it to you, but that was one of the things is like, I'm going to lose my mind.
The expo?
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even occur to me.
Are you going to record it? Will you be, doing it?
Yeah, there's no program, friends.
There's no
It's not happening.
No.
So, but again, it was because what we wanted was to get people face to face in person.
Right, and I think, one of the other options at that, very, very early stages was, well, the departments are open, we can just have an open house and we can have people go to all the different departments. And it's like, absolutely not. That is not going to work for what we want to do. We want everybody in the same place so that people can it can be really, really easy. Yeah. Because there's so many reasons to resist, right? Okay. There's so many arguments against, doing this kind of thing at 6 o'clock at night, when it's dinner time, when your kids have sports, when, you got to get home and give your mother her medication, like all of that stuff is going on at the same time. And so there's so many reasons not to do it. We've got to give all of the reasons to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's all in one place. It's all in one roof. There's food, there's childcare, there's prizes, there's giveaways. And I think, a lot of people would have shown up even if none of those things had happened. But I do think getting people all under one roof together benefited the community, but also benefited the boards and commissions and the departments that were there too, because they got to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Other than the location, because we already know it was a little too small for what, turned out to be an amazing event, what would you have done differently? What have you learned, to redirect in the future?
I think we did a really good job.
I don't doubt that, but, knowing now,
The only two complaints that I heard was, it was too packed and there wasn't enough parking. I mean, that was it. I didn't hear anybody else say anything.
Yeah, aside from publicizing it more ahead of time, which we know and we definitely can.
We knew we were in a crunch
think about
when
that.
we were only like 4 weeks out type of thing, but
So, I mean, other than that, I think it actually went really well, and it succeeded beyond my imagination for sure. So aside from writing a grant to make it a little bit easier for me not to have to do the whole thing, I'm also doing all of my other responsibilities. I think,
But outside of a grant, I mean, would there be any thoughts of forming like a committee, a volunteer committee, like 4th of July parade or, something like that, just to kind of...
I think we're control freaks. So.
Okay.
I saw your face looked like my face. I was like,
I mean, I guess maybe the involvement that I really want is people to show up to the event.
Right. Okay.
So I mean, and I think if we keep it to a very simple model like it is,
right.
it's very easy to get it done and motivated.
Yeah, and I think we do have like a really good blueprint from this year that we can copy paste to next year. So it's not going to be nearly as frantic as I felt like it was this year. Of course, I was also dealing with my own health challenges and things like that.
And again, like we've said, the time crunch. If we get going on this in
September, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did you start planning this whole
I
thing?
think it was November.
Pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was late November.
Yeah, maybe around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it
Did
could
we
have been.
talk before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, because
Could have been right around
December
then.
is just such a calm and quiet month.
Right, for everybody.
Well,
Sense sarcasm, okay?
Well, no, what happens is, it's so funny because somebody, when we first moved up here to New England, we were involved with something and somebody said to me, oh, well, you know, we disappear after school lets out and we're gone during the summer. We'll be back in September. I kept thinking, this is very odd, but it happens. So you can't plan,
Yeah.
you can't do any of that planning during the summer months. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. We are stuck with September and then everything comes crashing
and then
through.
everything, yeah. But I do think that, and actually, we might even want to start reaching out to people at schools in May.
Yeah.
So as they start planning for the upcoming school year, I really want to partner with Todd here at BHS, Todd Witten. I would love to partner with the 8th grade history teachers as well, and just have a little bit more of a student involvement, and have the students then bring their parents, and it's an extra credit, you know, for you if you show if
Ooh,
you,
extra credit.
right, get it signed by Nicci or
Yeah.
get a Burlington Buzz stamp.
Well, we talked about having like a bingo game or something
Yeah.
like that. So as people went around,
Yeah,
you know, some
okay.
way to kind of measure their engagement, and that might be something, in terms of what could we do better,
Right.
and having a metrics to measure, okay, did the average person only hit 4 tables? Did they hit 12 tables? You know, that
Did
kind
they
of
just stop for free stuff and then continue on?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you have,
The
you know,
food.
I want a tote bag, so I'm just going to go around and collect all the tote bags. So I went to all the stations,
Yeah.
but you know,
Yeah.
but exactly that degree of connection,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's kind of hard to
It's hard
figure
to
out.
measure, yeah. I think the one thing that I want to do now this week is, first of all, thank the donors and just let them know, like with pictures, how successful the event was. And then the second thing is to send out a quick couple questions to the departments and everybody else who hosted tables, and just say, like, what was your biggest takeaway? You know, what excited you the most, and what would you change for next year or something?
I have that email ready.
You
I
have
just
it?
didn't
Great.
send it.
Okay. All
Because I
right.
was going to talk to you about it.
I love it. We're
Well,
like
now
peas
you
in a pod
know.
here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah.
What have we not covered? Where do you see do you see it as an annual event, and how would you like to see it change over, you know, either the event itself or the residuals, like more involvement and how much more? And
It's
do you
a-
want to like sneak down into the elementary schools or the middle school and have, you know, more engagement that way?
It's a good question. I mean, I think right now my mind is just on replicating what we've already done, because it's been a rough few months in my world, and I think that next year I'll probably have a little bit more energy to innovate a little bit more. I mean, I could see it going as deep as like having, you know, specific activities for different grade levels, and, you know, having the 3rd graders answer these questions and the 5th graders answer those questions, which seems a little bit unnecessarily complicated. But, you know, I could see a partnership with the schools for sure, because really what we want to do is educate future voters as well as current voters as to what, you know, why it's important to be civically engaged. And I think, you know, that trickles down from family member to family member, from, you know, with the generations. If kids are seeing their parents show up at these kinds of things, then they're going to going to see that and internalize it. But also, if the kids have to go, or are begging their parents to go because they get 5 points on their, you know, their social studies test, if they do, you know, the parents might actually find that it's a good time. And you know,
it's one of those things about, okay, I'll bring you, and then, oh, I accidentally learned something.
accidentally had fun.
That's right.
Darn!
Yeah, I know that happens.
And I think the great thing about the group of people that showed up, like they all have such great personalities that one of the readers actually sent me a message and said, everybody was really happy to see us. They were happy to talk about what they were doing.
Cool.
Burlington Players, another nonprofit
Yeah.
that
Yep.
I told you I'm gonna keep thinking about
remembering
them. But yeah, so that is another that's another thing that was really nice because people were just so enthusiastic about and eager to share what they do with people. Made me feel good.
Yeah.
Just kind of popped into my head, but I'm thinking with all the different departments and all the different organizations that were represented, if money were no object, okay, would there be some kind of print material that people could take home as a refresher of...
We made a trifold.
Yeah.
It's very
Okay.
basic, very
Yeah.
basic.
But yeah, and again, I think that giving ourselves a little more time, we
Because it's like, oh, I met somebody and we talked about, this, and now what do I do? But,
Yeah.
having like a...
I could see even
Like a-
putting the org chart there
Yeah.
or putting some key points from the master plan or, things that...
But even just like a contact list, like a brief,
Yeah.
2-sentence description
Yeah.
of...
And Nicci did put
Okay.
on the map, there was a map of the room, and she did list, I thought it was a good thing afterwards, that you listed all the...
Everybody who
who was
was
there. So yeah,
Okay.
but expanding upon that, so maybe I have room to write something.
Right.
If I,
Yeah, if we had
had
more real estate,
yeah,
more
little
time.
yeah, exactly. But that is another good suggestion.
And I'm also thinking, not to put more work on Nicci, you wanted student engagement. So like having the high schoolers come up with that bingo game.
Yeah.
And that way all you need to do is print it. So the work would already be done and, you would have
and-
editorial decision making.
Yeah.
And Todd is the one with the 3rd grade class, right?
I think Todd is the high school civics
Okay.
teacher.
Well, there was also, there's an initiative with the 3rd graders too, that fits into the state social studies curriculum changes.
Oh,
And so
okay.
that would be, another thing.
Yeah.
They could even have
Talk to
something.
Mr. Musselman.
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
he works
That's
on all
it,
of
yeah.
that. Oh, okay, Sean. Yeah, we can talk with that group as well because they've been revamping the entire curriculum in
Yeah.
the school district. So
Yeah.
could,
Just less work for you,
Yeah.
but still.
But just grabbing onto the coattails of the other synergy that's going.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Because synergy is the right word, right? We want to complement what other people are already
Yeah.
doing. If you've already got a civics curriculum, like what's more important than civics in your backyard?
Yeah.
We can go and talk to your class. That way
Yeah.
you don't have to teach for 45 minutes.
Well,
That's,
and
that was always my favorite days when somebody came to my class.
When a guest speaker, actually, I'm dating myself when they wheeled in the TV. With
Oh,
the
yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things actually that came out of that day that they did at Francis Wyman is one of the kids, I have it hanging in my office, he did a picture of I don't know how that fit, but it did fit from whoever came and talked to there, was he drew a picture of the town hall and then wrote, I think the question was, what did you do at the town, or what do you do at the town hall? So he wrote, pay your taxes, get your marriage license. It's just adorable. So we have it hanging up in the office.
Well, that is a fantastic idea for an illustration contest.
And that's also an excellent idea and a
is how
happy
you
note to
illustrate your
end on.
booth.
Exactly.
Because we are actually out of time.
Oh, wow.
That was quick.
It was.
fast.
But it was very, I love your energy and I love the enthusiasm and I love the idea. So thank you for taking time out of your crazy busy schedules to come and share with us. And I'm looking forward to next year's plan.
Me
So-
too.
Yes,
But I'm gonna breathe for a couple minutes. Is that
Yes,
okay?
you can do
I
that.
just take a few breaths before?
So I do want to thank everyone
off.
for tuning in this evening. I hope you, if you were not able to attend this past year's Civic Expo, make sure you keep your eyes and ears open for next year's. So thank you for tuning in. Stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you around town. Good night.
Hi, it's Nicci and Amy. And we're just going to we did the drawing off camera for the door prizes. Our wonderful volunteers here at BCAT chose 3 winners for our door prizes. And the first door prize is
It's a rec department gift certificate for a class.
for $50. Yeah. And the winner of this one is Usha Engel. All right, so come collect your prize by emailing hello@burlington.buzz or calling Amy at the town clerk's office at 781-270-1660. All right, number 2
It's for a dinner gift card for $50.
No, for $100.
Oh, for $100.
At Rosa Mexicano here in
nice.
Burlington at the mall. And this one goes to
Sandy Weeks.
Sandy! That's so exciting. All right.
Good.
And the final one, I have the prop right here. So this is a really cool Italian dinner kit. It's got a whole bunch of different vinegars. There's balsamic, there's extra virgin olive oil, there is Prosecco wine vinegar, and some pasta and different sauces. It's really, really lovely, courtesy of the Council on Aging. Mm-hmm. And this one goes to
Janice McGee.
Janice.
Yay.
All right. So everybody send me an email at hello@burlington.buzz or call Amy at
781-270-1660.
And thank you so much for coming to the Civic Expo. We really appreciated having you there, and come again next year.
Yes, we will see you next year.